one too? Sure. Okay.
What now?
Perfect.
Who's name? What?
You guys are just going to go in line. She's going to start.
We're gonna
Okay,
call our
gotcha.
congressional leaders here so we can sit them out.
Sure. Wherever you're at the end.
Okay. First,
Hey, Doug from Alpha, California.
thank you so much, Debbie, from Moms for America.
Good to see you. Thank you so much, guys. I saw you for another one as well.
Thank you.
Spoken here a couple of times now.
Scoot over.
Yes, sir. You bet.
Everyone, can we take one step to your right? Absolutely. Yes, sir. We want signs? Yes. Okay. You got signs? When you go up.
Yeah. Okay. We can have a couple of these signs back here. That would be great. Where is Aaron? Aaron?
Yeah. Just open. I got lots of.
I think what may be easier is if I start creating these. So what I'm saying is I think we'll just start with it.
Okay. Sure.
We'll get what our Congress. Okay. And then we'll go to that. Okay.
Yeah, they'll be asking you all questions.
Okay. One step this way. One step this way. Okay. All right. I'm just checking 1, 2. We're about ready to get going if you all are ready. We have 4 congressional. Yes. Okay. All right. Well, if we're ready to get going, I will officially welcome the press. Thank you so much for showing up. We do appreciate taking time out today to cover this. Good afternoon. Thank you all again for coming. My name is Debbie Carlitis. I am the Vice President of Moms for America, a national movement of moms reclaiming our culture for truth, family, freedom, and the Constitution. Protecting women's sports has become one of the top issues for moms all across the country because of the blatant attack on our girls and the attempt to erase athletic fairness. We as moms are extremely concerned about the integrity of women's sports and the safety of our girls in the game and in the locker rooms. Moms for America would like to thank our congressional leaders that have shown up today to support us and to help champion safety for women's sports. So thank you so much for coming. We so appreciate that. Thank you to our athletes. We have some of the top athletes joining us today, from skateboarding to basketball to swimming to volleyball. We have invited a lot of athletes to come and their mothers, a cyclist who is also a mother, to share their stories and explain. And it's shocking that we have to even explain why it is so important to protect women's sports. I am going to go ahead and start with some thoughts about raising awareness and calling on the Senate to pass H.R. 734. That is our main goal here today. We are asking for the Senate to call this bill and to pass this bill, the Protection of Women and Girls in the Sports Act of 2023. This legislation has already passed the House, but it has not received a vote, and that is not acceptable for Moms for America. Congress passed Title IX 51 years ago in order to guarantee that American women and girls would have equal opportunity to access in athletics. Lawmakers today must protect and advance the legacy by clarifying the law to ensure that women's sports remain safe and competitive for our athletes. I would like to go ahead and start our press conference welcoming the rock star from Illinois, my home state, Representative Mary Miller, and then we will go ahead and hear comments from our other congressional leaders. So I will go ahead and start with you, Representative Miller. Thank you so much for being a co-host on this.
Okay. Thank you. As a mother of 5 daughters and grandma to 8, I'm horrified by the Biden administration's ardent push to force biological men into girls' sports. Our girls deserve safe locker rooms and fair opportunities in athletics. I was proud to co-sponsor the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act, which passed the House and must be taken up by the Senate. Allowing biological men into women's locker rooms not only undermines the integrity of women's athletics, but also puts our girls at risk. On his first day in office, President Biden signed an executive order to destroy Title IX and force young girls to share locker rooms with biological men. That is why the first bill I introduced in Congress is called the Safety and Opportunity for Girls Act, which specifies that sex in Title IX is biologic, not identity. I will not stop fighting in Congress to protect and defend our children, especially our daughters, against this radical woke ideology. I'd like to say, parents, you must demand that the Senate take swift action in passing the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. And now I'd like to introduce my good friend from Tennessee, Congresswoman Diana Harshbarger. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. It's an honor to be here, and it's a privilege to come and talk to you as well as American parents. I'm a mother and a grandmother, and what they're doing to our daughters is unconscionable. You know, I voted for the Women's and Girls Sports Act, and that was just, I didn't have to put any thought in it. You know, I've been a pharmacist for 36 years, and for heaven's sakes, I know as a healthcare professional, you can never change somebody's DNA. We respect everybody and what they choose to do, but you cannot change someone's DNA. And no woman should ever be denied an opportunity, a scholarship, or a place on the podium because a biological male is competing against them. And what I really want to talk about is we are in the middle of a spiritual battle with our children, against our children. And what's happening in our society is, as the Bible says, what is looked at as evil is now being looked at as good, and what is good is being looked at as evil. That is a spiritual message that I want to send to every American. What they're doing to our young women is atrocious, but what they're doing to our little children, they're going to be brought up this way to think that it's okay to do this, and it's okay to, we cannot legislate morality, ladies and gentlemen. We can't do it. And it is up to us in Congress to pass legislation that protects the women and keeps the biological men out of sports. And without that, and it takes a spirit of boldness to do this, because we are inundated every day with hatred because we take a stand against this. So under this legislation, it ensures that Title IX will protect women as it was intended. Federally funded schools that allow men who are pretending to be women to participate in all-female sports will be faced with a Title IX violation. And I'm asking everybody who listens to this press conference, you call your senators and you let them know that you support this legislation. Let's get it to the floor for a vote and find out where your senators stand on the issue. And that's all I'm going to say right now. And I'm going to turn this over to my dear friend, Representative Owens from the state of Utah. He is a fierce fighter on this front.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to join the Moms of America, for America, these courageous female athletes, and my colleagues in Congress support the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act of 2023. More than a century ago, Title IX turned the tide against discrimination and prejudice toward women in sports. As a father of 5 and a grandfather of 12 granddaughters, I have witnessed firsthand the benefit of equal opportunity for women in competitive sports on and off the field. The Biden administration has an all-out assault on Title IX protections for women and girls, and sports has eroded the progress of women, have made sports an affront to our nation's founding principles of meritocracy, hard work, and fairness. Allowing biological men to compete against women in sports is not only unscientific, is reckless, but it's totally unfair. As the chair of the Higher Education Workforce Development Committee, I was proud to lead the effort in the People's House to pass the Women and Girls in Sports Act of 2023. I call upon the Senate to pass a common sense legislation to protect women's sports to safe and fair competition. I was blessed to have been raised in a remarkable generation by the greatest generation in the history of mankind. And I'll tell you what they taught us as young men. To be a man that's going to be respected, that you look back on your life and realize with a legacy. It's very simple. Learn to love God, country, family, respect women, and authority. We're not only seeing the disrespect of women, but the demeaning of manhood. I'm going to ask the fathers out there, man up. Watch your daughters and see if they're competing against, and if it's not fair, man up. Have the courage to stand up and fight for them. If we get to the point where men sit back, cowardly allow women to be disrespected, to be treated unfairly, to steal their dreams and hopes, we have lost our society. Men, stand up, man up. It's a time for us to go against this evil ideology that's going to impact our country forever. We cannot let it happen. And we're determined here in the Congress not to let it happen. Thank you. I want to introduce my good friend, Doug. Councilor, come on up.
Well, good afternoon. I'm proud to stand here today for Moms for America. I guess as a dad for America too. Is that an associate? So our bottom line here is we urge the Senate to take this legislation that the House did, take it up, and show us where you are. You know, as my good friend Burgess O just said, you know, for the guys, man up. But for everybody, tackle this issue and look at it. And ladies, I'm sorry that we even have to be here today or in the past to do this. It defies common sense. It defies any kind of logic. Indeed, it's not even just ideological. This is a spiritual battle. And so for us to even have to contemplate that, oh, let's have men play in women's sports or men take part in women's activities. You know, in many ways in society we differentiate because people have differences. We have different weight classes in boxing. You have junior varsity versus varsity in high school. You have age ranges where people compete at the level they're supposed to. Well, the same goes with gender or sex. You know, women's divisions and men's division. There's differences. There's nuances, and you know, it's nice to have them have their own categories. You know, women's figure skating is one of the most beautiful things you'll ever see. I don't want to watch some man try and do that. So it's really a matter of respect and getting back to common sense. Why we're wasting America's time contemplating that men should be in women's sports or other women's places like that is ridiculous. This should have been like a 30-second question. Yeah, should we have men in women's places? No, it's that easy. Yet there's so much confusion these days in our society over just about everything. It used to be bedrock issues, bedrock knowledge, and we keep playing this game. So, ladies, I urge you to keep standing in there and fighting for what you're talking about. You make me proud, and I'm proud to stand with you. And I know there's some really hard decisions that are some of our girls and women in sports have to deal with, such as if you show up to a track meet or a swim meet, and you see males basically on the stand or on the lane next to you here. Maybe more and more girls and women. I know it's a horrific sacrifice. Maybe you just need to walk away from that competition and say, you know what, we're not going to be subjected to the humiliation of this. That's not for me to say. That's for them to decide, because training for any level, whether it's Olympics or NCAAs or high school, I know a lot of hard work goes into that. So God bless all our women and girls and the Moms for America that are bringing this battle forward. And I hope we can put an end to this nonsense. You can get back to doing the normal things in life, like working for scholarships, working to graduate from school, working to raise your kids, and lead a normal life. So with that, again, I'm proud to stand with all these ladies and girls in sports. And I'd also like now at this point to turn it over to a young lady I've gotten to know just a little bit in this process too, that I'm proud to know, and her efforts are not unnoticed. Macy Petty.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hello, everybody. I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you so much, Moms for America, for allowing me to come and tell you my story. My name is Macy Petty, and I'm an NCAA scholarship volleyball player. But more importantly, I'm a young woman who believes in the power of recognizing and honoring femininity. Something I'm crazy for speaking up while I'm still in my sport. Many have been threatened to stay silent, but I refuse. It's just too important. In the next few minutes, I'm going to share my story with you and shed light on the challenges faced by female athletes, and emphasize the importance of preserving women's sports for the sake of fairness, safety, and the future of all young girls who dream of playing sports reserved for them. As I noted, I'm a college athlete. This is something that did not come easy, and that many were not willing to make the sacrifices that I was to achieve. In fact, only about 2% of high school athletes go on to receive an athletic scholarship. But while there are already a limited number of girls' roster spots in college, men are increasingly stealing these reserved opportunities. The intrusion of males in female athletics undermines fairness and possesses a direct threat to the integrity of competition. And I've sadly had to experience this. In high school, I was at a club tournament trying to get noticed and get a scholarship. Lots of scouts were there. I mean, a lot. Like, this was that one opportunity that I had been waiting forever for. But when I walked up to the court, there was something different. I looked on the other side of the court, and on the other team was a very tall and athletic man. I did not sign up to be in a co-ed league, and there was male courts just across the convention center. Now, I'd like to note, those male courts on the other side of the convention center had nets over 7 inches higher than the female net that I was playing on. Despite this, the ruling authorities decided that this boy's feelings overrode our opportunity to play in a female-only league. This athlete played on a net 7 inches shorter than he should have as a man, and with his biological advantages, he wooed the college scouts. I hate to think of what young lady was passed over to make room for him on their college team. Does this sound right to you? Is this the future of women's sports that we want to create for young girls? This is the future that some are fighting for. A future where countless girls have stories just like mine. A future where men dominating sports is not merely an obstacle for some to have to overcome, but a norm that all will have to overcome. This sounds like a strong fight that lots of women already fought about 50 years ago with the passage of Title IX. Blurring these lines between male and female sports is not only unfair, but it's also unsafe. It's appalling to think that women are being forced to undress themselves in front of men, and anyone who encourages this kind of behavior is effectively promoting a severely dangerous and harmful environment for girls, including opportunities for assault. Beyond the issue of safety, there's a fundamental need in our society to recognize the honor, value, and dignity of being a woman. We are not boys, nor will we ever be. And we should celebrate the unique qualities that women bring to sports and society. This is my call to honor femininity and appreciate what makes women different. Don't force women to compete against men and belittle them when their biological differences arise. Instead, let's provide them with an opportunity to compete within their own teams, change in their own spaces, and reserve female athletic roster spots and scholarships for females. I'm immensely grateful for the House and Senate Republicans who refuse to sacrifice women's opportunity to woke ideology. Their commitment to preserving the integrity of women's sports gives me hope for a future where our culture values the unique contributions of true femininity. I urge each and every one of you to not only agree that men shouldn't be in women's sports, but to be bold in your convictions and work towards changing our culture from within. Let's champion the cause of fairness, safety, and the recognition of the value of being a woman. Together, we can build a society that cherishes femininity and empowers girls to pursue their dreams without boundaries. And step one is calling your senators. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Evie Edwards. I'm a wife, mother, and a registered Democrat. I'm a former four-year full scholarship NCAA cross-country athlete, and I'm a current elite cyclist with world, national, and medals in cycling. I was an athlete in Los Angeles UCI Masters Track Worlds, where the first trans-identified male was awarded a woman's title and world record for 2 consecutive years. Most of the people I associate with are open-minded and compassionate. We agree that the inclusion of male bodies in female sports is unfair for everyone. Policies that allow male competitors to claim awards and recognition meant for female athletes are wrong and need urgent reversal. Liberal women like me agree. Fairness in women's sports is not a partisan issue. Yet I'm baffled and disappointed by the lack of support from my Democratic Party. Rather than promote the findings of 22 peer-reviewed studies that show the male-born athletic advantage cannot be muted, my party has chosen to focus on supporting inclusion policies that are unfair for females. I have 2 athletic children. My 11-year-old daughter excels excuse me, in soccer, taekwondo, and cycling. I have concerns for fairness and safety, and I feel dismayed at the inevitable decision that we'll have to make if she continues her athletic pursuits with trans-identified males. Just as families of female athletes all over the country are now experiencing, our decisions will be rooted in concerns for her physical safety, her self-esteem, and mental well-being. This doesn't happen in boys' sports. It's an injustice to girls. Policies placing trans-identified youth's anonymity over the safety and fairness of girls creates inevitable distraction and discord among athletes, coaches, and families. Female athletes are not given the opportunity to choose whether or not to participate to avoid higher risk of injury or shared locker rooms. We know females experience puberty differently than males. Boys develop muscles and bones which are advantageous for any sport they choose to participate in. Female puberty often brings weight gain, a distribution shift in fat and lean muscle, breast development, and of course menstruation. Women and girls have had much higher rates of knee injury and experience higher rates of concussion than their male counterparts in sports. I've given birth twice and have overcome hormonal changes, body composition, and childcare logistics to return to high-level competition. As I age and lose the hormones I was born with, I will not be able to take HRT and compete legally. Yet trans-identified men are allowed a custom cocktail of hormones to optimally compete. It is not fair at any level or age to force females to compete with males. When women and men speak up about this unfairness, they are accused of harassment and bigotry. For the better part of a year, I had to defend myself to safe sport investigators because 2 trans-identified males accused me of sexual harassment and sexual misconduct simply for wearing a Save Women's Sports shirt in competition. Organizations that were created to protect women and girls are being used as social weapons to silence us. However, I have experienced the overwhelming support of peers and athletes who understand that speaking out is the only way to ensure fair and meaningful competition for females. Female sport exists to showcase the awesome ability of the female body and mind to accomplish feats of strength, speed, rigor, and agility amongst other female athletes. Without a separation of the sexes in sports, females will not be celebrated, but rather excluded from their own sport. Males have been granted special permission to compete against women and girls in instances where males' perspectives and feelings are more important than awarding and recognizing female skill, talent, drive, and training. What does this say about the status of girls? Is there no value in female athletic performance and accomplishment? We can celebrate the differences of individuals and still include every body in appropriate sport categories. The discussion is not complicated. Bodies play sports, not identities. For additional information, I urge you to look up the Independent Council on Women's Sport, Champion Women, and the Women's Sports Policy Working Group. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abby Carr, and I am an NCAA D1 swimmer, an Olympic trials qualifier, and a 2022 conference champion. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Moms for America, and thank you for allowing me to share my experience as both an athlete and a woman. My journey in women's athletics began when I was just 7. I have been fortunate enough to compete at the national level for the past 6 years, spending upwards of 20 hours in the pool weekly to reach my lifelong goal of Olympic trials in 2021. Competing for my private high school, my neighborhood pool, a nationally recognized club team, and now a D1 women's swimming program, my journey in athletics has been far-reaching and indubitably formative in shaping the steadfast woman I am today. Today I have a brief but powerful anecdote rooted in empirical fact regarding my experience as a female swimmer for all of you. In December of 2015, at age 12, I went 2 minutes and 5 seconds in the 200 butterfly. This was not only a meet record, but it was faster than all of the 11-12 boys who competed in the race. Now let's look at the same race, 200 butterfly, last year in 2022. At conference championships, my time, 1:57, was the top time in the league. Over the course of the 7 years in between those two races, I trained upwards of 20 hours a week, waking up some mornings at 4:30 a.m. to get to the pool before school, only to go back after school and train another 2 hours in the afternoons. This was a gradual process, chipping away slowly and painfully at my time, sometimes only improving by a matter of milliseconds. This year at the league championships, the male time that won was a 1:42. That is a difference of 15 seconds. This means the top male swimmer in the league beat me by over an entire length of a 25-yard pool. Matter of fact, my time would not have even qualified to be recruited for a men's team in D1 swimming, let alone be competitive with other male swimmers in the league. Now let us briefly return to 2015. When boys began beating me for the first time in my life, I was about 13 years old. I can distinctly recall a time where my coach pulled me out of the pool during a practice, where I was showing increasing frustration at the reality that the same 3 boys I had trained with my entire life were now beating me for the first time in practice. I could no longer pace with them. I will never forget my coach telling me that the days of me beating these boys, or any boys for that matter, had ended. They were simply growing faster and stronger. It's just puberty, he said. Obviously, I was not thrilled by the implications of this conversation, but I was grateful for my coach's transparency. After all, he was right. These boys were visibly changing, growing into men, gaining both muscle and height that my body simply would not. These advantages, more muscle mass, height, endurance, greater bone density, lung capacity, and overall athleticism, do not vary with identity or personality. They are simply biological realities determined by sex. At the age of 13, I was certainly not a member of Congress, but I did not need to be an elected official to fully grasp the implications of biological difference in sport. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Taylor Silverman, and I'm a skateboarder. I grew up playing girls basketball and softball and experiencing the benefits of Title IX. We had equal opportunities to our male peers. In high school, I made the switch to homeschooling and took up an interest in skateboarding since I was no longer playing school sports. I fell in love with it very quickly, and I've been skateboarding now for 12 years. And for the past several years, I've traveled around the country competing. My experience competing in women's skateboarding was quickly tainted, though, as I realized that the equal playing field I had prior no longer existed. In 2018, a male entered a women's contest I participated in California, and this happened 2 more times, in 2020 in Illinois and in 2021 in Nebraska. And both those times I was bumped from first place to second, and it was a different male each time. I was never asked if I was okay with this or forewarned, and if I had been, I would have said absolutely not. So after the 3rd contest, I finally decided to speak up. But when I reached out to contest organizers at Red Bull and raised my concerns about fairness and about my paycheck being cut because the male athlete received $5,000 of the prize money that was intended for female athletes, I was completely ignored. I watched this become a common occurrence in women's skateboarding, and I heard stories of it impacting just about every other sport on all levels. I knew that many other female athletes were going through the same thing, and young girls were missing out on ever experiencing the fairness and equal opportunity that I had experienced in sports as a child. Going through this was mentally tormenting. Watching as no one stood up for me and being ignored when I tried to speak up for myself made me feel worthless in a space that was supposedly created for people like me. I felt a moral obligation to do my part to bring an end to this and to share my story. So I posted it on social media, and it immediately went viral. Though some people tried to bully me into silence, they were vastly outnumbered by people supporting me. And I realized that this issue was much larger than I originally had thought. But the most important part of my experience is that it's not unique. And if nothing is done to restore the integrity to women's sports, there will be countless female athletes who face the negative impacts of males invading our space. At 28 years old, I'm well aware that I'm not going to be competing in skateboarding contests for my whole life. So I'm speaking out for all female athletes and for the next generation of girls. It means the world to me to be here with Moms for America because my goal is to become a mom. I was raised by a single dad, so it was important to both my father and I for me to have positive female role models growing up. Sometimes this was my grandma, my older sister, teachers, coaches, even babysitters. And I believe having these strong women in my life, along with having a phenomenal father, has shaped me into the woman that I am today. And after my experience, I could not help but to think about how I would feel if I had a daughter go through this one day. How would I tell her that I hadn't spoken up for myself when it happened to me? What sort of example would that set for her? I think this experience has given me a very small glimpse of what it's like to make sacrifices as a parent, something that the mothers here today do every single day. And I view all the women behind me as role models too. So I thank you guys. And I hope that one day when I have children of my own, that they understand what I'm doing here today and they view me as a role model as well. I'm here to urge the Senate to vote to protect girls and women in sports, to vote like your daughter's rights depend on it, because they do. Thank you.
Hi. First of all, I wanted to thank Debbie and Moms for America for inviting my daughter Cassidy and I to join them today. We're very honored to be here. My name is Janet Comer. One of the greatest privileges of my life has been to be a mom. I have 3 children. My son Justin is 30, my son Evan is 25, and Cassidy is my baby girl. As mom of a female athlete, one of my greatest concerns for the safety and well-being of young women forced to compete against biological males. There's increased risk of injury, both physical and emotional. There's loss of scholarships, and there's a minimizing of years of hard work that these young women have put into improving themselves in competition. Being forced to change in a locker room with men is wrong. I'd like to join with Moms for America in calling on the U.S. Senate to schedule a vote on H.R. 734, the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act of 2023. This bill prohibits school athletic programs from allowing individuals whose biological sex at birth is male. It prohibits them from participating in women's sports. In 2021, in our great home state of Texas, legislation was passed defending the rights of young women and girls at the junior high and high school levels. We now have a bill that has passed the Texas House and Senate with bipartisan support to offer the same protection to our collegiate women athletes. Now, I would like to introduce my little girl. Cassidy has been playing basketball since she was in 6th grade. She excelled in the sport, and in spite of a major injury in her senior year of high school, was awarded a roster position with Midwestern State University in Wichita Falls, Texas. Due to additional injuries and another surgery since then, she stepped away from basketball for now, and is speaking up for the rights of young women in sports. She was at the Texas State Capitol for both the junior high and high school level bills and as well the collegiate one. She has been a strong voice for women, and frankly, my own daughter has been a huge inspiration to me as well. Cass?
Sorry. Hi, my name is Cassidy Comer. I am a former collegiate basketball player, having played at Midwestern State University in Wichita Falls, Texas. I'm honored to be here today among some really awesome ladies and some really great athletes in order to share my own experiences, as well as speaking on behalf of so many other women who feel the same but don't have the same voice. I have played basketball since I was 11 years old. As I started to play AAU basketball, I chose to practice in scrimmage against male athletes and male basketball players in order to better my skills and in order to get stronger on the court. I distinctly remember on several occasions my high school team chose to scrimmage against a junior high boys team, and we got beat. I was one of the younger girls on that team, ranging from ages 15 to 17 or 18, and we were beat by a team of 12 to 13-year-olds. Looking to another example of the same concept, the U.S. women's soccer team was beat by a team made up of just high school boys. How can we say that this is justified when we see so many examples of the same thing happening? As I continued to play in AAU basketball, I chose to practice several times against the boys' team on my club. I walked into that practice not knowing what I might expect, but as a competitive athlete, it was humbling to say the least. Giving it my all as I ran up and down the court in the full court drills, I saw the men to my left and right running with ease to keep up with me. As we began the position-specific drills, I quickly became aware of the immense strength difference as well. I, who would have posted up girls of comparable size with confidence, was getting demolished by guys that weren't even going to play at the collegiate level. A tactic that is used in many of the Division I colleges around the country of recruiting men to play as a practice team for the girls to go up against is another prime example of this same thing. In the process of making these practice teams, the coaches don't have to recruit from men who didn't make the men's team. They can recruit from boys who choose to play at the intramural clubs and may not have even played in the high school level. And even then, they have to be reminded to go easy on the girls. How can anyone argue in good conscience that it is fair for men to play against a woman or on a women's team when a male that hasn't even competed at the high school level has to be reminded to go less than 100% for a chance for the women's team to even have a chance to succeed and be safe? The reason I am no longer playing basketball at the moment is that I have faced 4 major injuries in the last 4 years, 2 of which have resulted in major knee injuries and surgeries. According to Yale Medicine, women are 2 to 8 times more likely to tear an ACL than men are. According to the same article, anatomically, this is a quote, anatomically, men and women are not created equal. The female pelvis is wider, which changes the mechanics of how the thigh bone, tibia, and femur function, according to Dr. Elizabeth Garner. She goes on to say, this puts more stress on the soft tissues that support your joints, which can lead to both chronic and acute injuries. This data confirms the risk that women face because of their anatomy, a risk that a biological male competing in the same competition would be far less likely to receive. We as women athletes do not consent to the invasion of our spaces that we have fought so hard to protect and to create in the past 50 years. We have made so much progress in protecting these women and our freedoms, and now it is all at risk in the name of inclusion? I don't think that's right. I'm calling on the Senate to pass this bill and to protect women. Thank you.
Awesome. You guys come closer. Let's finish this out strong. Come on in. Wow, it is awesome to be here today. It is awesome to be here today with Moms for America. Let me introduce myself. I am Barbara Ehart, state representative from the great state of Idaho. I was actually the first one to bring this state legislation forward in 2020. I have since testified in about 30 states. I've been in Texas and North Carolina this year trying to help us bring it forward and get it over the line. Texas's governor is now set to sign this in the upcoming, I think, 10 days. So that will get signed. We're still waiting on North Carolina. Friends, let me tell you a little bit about myself if I could. You see, Title IX changed my life. I was born in the 60s, grew up in the 70s, and people had asked me, life was so different back then. A couple of us that may be a little bit older, you don't understand what it was like to be female back then. And they would say, Barbara, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you know what I'd tell them? I would tell them that I wanted to play sports. And you know what I was told? I literally was told that's not what girls do. But I stayed the course. And in 1972, unbeknownst to me, Title IX was passed. And it gave me the opportunity to play junior high basketball, then high school ball, and then I was able to play at Idaho State Division I basketball on a scholarship. Now, the uniqueness to me also is that I'm also a Division I women's basketball coach. I spent 15 years coaching Division I women's basketball at 4 fantastic institutions: UC Santa Barbara, BYU, Washington State, and then as a head coach at Cal State Fullerton. And I'm just telling you that to see what's happening right now, to see our opportunities being taken away is a travesty. I spent years fighting for opportunities for our girls and women, and now we're going backwards. But let me explain a little bit something that maybe you have or haven't thought about. You see, when I was when we brought this legislation forward in 2020, there was a man who had started track at University of Montana named John Eastwood. Well, John decided to become John's last year, much like Leah Thomas, who, as Will Thomas, competed for 3 years at Penn, and the last year decided to compete as Leah. These two athletes, let me just explain how athletics works at the college level. We are a repeat and repeat. And if these two athletes decided their freshman year to compete instead of their senior year to compete as women, let me tell you what the universities would have been forced to do. They would have been forced to go out and find another male to be able to compete, because you know what the other side tells you? They're telling you it's just about humanity and it's about inclusion and it's about community. Folks, I'm telling you that's not true at all. When it comes to athletics, when it comes to keeping your job, it is about winning. If it wasn't about winning, players wouldn't get cut and coaches wouldn't get fired. It's about winning. Make no mistake, and we cannot compete with the male counterparts. And we shouldn't be asked to compete with the male counterparts. That's not right. When we have to remember, we're 50% of the population. Do not keep discriminating against us. And as of right now, like my friends back here, like Moms for America, we're calling on Mitch McConnell as the leader to lead, to be courageous. Courage begets courage. Right now in our states, we have 21 states, about to have 22 states that have passed this legislation. You know what's happened lately? Democrats have crossed over. Why? Because 80% of the population believes it's the right thing to do. We had Democrats cross over in Louisiana. Democrats cross over in Kansas. Tulsi Gabbard started it. Just recently in Alabama, when they added higher ed, in Alabama, we had 17 Democrats cross over in the House. 7 voted present. 2 voted present on the Senate side, and I think 2 voted in favor of this. Same thing happened in Texas. 10 crossed over. 10 Democrats voted yes. 2 voted present. 2 voted present on the Senate side. People, it's a movement. Mitch McConnell, step up. Be courageous. And again, Moms for America, thank you so very much for inviting all of us. Fantastic. And thank you guys for being here. This is just a fantastic opportunity to gather again and remind us why this is important. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Boy, that's a tough act to follow. You can see why, literally, we personally called each of these athletes to come and speak and share their story. Thank you, Representative. I mean, we met her a couple years ago, and she was on our Moms for America podcast, and we just thank you so much, Representative, for championing this in your state. Thank you to all the legislators that are championing legislation in their states to save women's sports. So in closing, again, thank you to all of our athletes. Thank you for using your voice. I know this can be difficult, but we know this isn't easy, but it is necessary. Thank you to our representatives in Congress here that came out tonight or today to champion safe and fair sports for our young girls. We so appreciate that. To those that are watching, we are asking the senators to vote on H.R. 734, the Protection of Women and Girls Sports Act of 2023. The reason why I'm mentioning this is that moms who are watching, our Moms for America, we are going to put the pressure on the Senate to pass this bill. That is what we are doing here at Moms for America. We are raising awareness, and we are asking for that vote to be passed. Here's the bottom line. This generation and future generations will have their hopes and their dreams of female competitive sports completely shattered. It is up to us as mothers, as athletes, as moms and dads, to protect women's sports and ensure a safe space for women to compete and thrive athletically. Thank you for joining us. Moms for America is going to be championing and protecting our girls and women's sports. It's not the last of us. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, let's in right here. Everybody in. Let's go.
Uh-oh, for the
Hey.
coach.
Team on three. 1, 2, 3.
Team. All right, thank you. Are you guys taking questions? I think we have I have to ask Aaron here if we have time. Right, I know there's another group coming, but we can do any interviews over here on the side for sure. Okay, yeah, sure. I know that they want to have us kind of. Hello. Any of the athletes are willing to speak? Representative is willing to speak as well?
Can't have nice things.
Right. Holy Hannah. No, you're kidding.